Yeah.
excited that you, wow, replied to me. So dizzy so in my head reaching out to people, but I'm like, whatever, I gotta do it.
Oh, you are.
Um,
You're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm super excited to be able to chat with you today. I remember sitting back in the NICU, and I don't remember exactly when you delivered, but I remember my nurses that day being like, it was so crazy. There's 10 babies born, 4 of them from one mom. And I was like, what? Hold up, let's
Yeah.
stop there for a second. And then I like found the article that you did and things like that. And yeah, I've just been so curious ever since. I'm excited to have the opportunity to kind of rack your brain and see how
Yeah.
this
Thank
journey played
you.
out.
Small world that you were there, and yeah, it's cool. Thanks for reaching out. It's
Right?
good to hear from you.
Of course. Well, I'm going to dive right into it because obviously you're very busy. Do you want to just tell us like a little bit about who you are as a mom in life?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been a high school teacher for 11 years, and I teach phys ed, sports medicine, and biology. So the biology piece is really cool. That comes into my story a little bit as well. I had my first daughter in 2022, so kind of peak COVID times. Back when there was still a bazillion restrictions. And so I had a singleton who was exclusively breastfed during COVID times, and we were super isolated. So very different experience than our second birth, obviously. And yeah, I've lived in Edmonton my whole life. I have 2 dogs. I live on the West End with my husband and family. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I like the mountains. I like running. I like reading. I think that is a hobby that I would like to come back to a little bit one day. I like listening to podcasts, and I listen to a lot of podcasts and follow a lot of stories about parenting and motherhood and birth stories and life. And that's why I was really interested when you reached out to me too.
I love that. So you had quads for your second set of babes. That was naturally conceived, I understand.
It was. So we knew we wanted one more, and we got pregnant very quickly, spontaneously, with no increased risk factors for multiples at all. So there was no, we don't have any twins in the family, no triplets in the family. I do, and it'll come back later, have a set of quads in the family. But yeah, I am young. I had no fertility medication. I had no fertility treatment. There was no reason to suspect I was hyperovulating or was going to get pregnant with multiples. So we decided to try, and I knew pretty quickly I was pregnant. Probably with twins is what I kind of let my head go to, because I was so much sicker, so much more tired. It felt so much harder than my first pregnancy right away. And then we found out about the quadruplets at our 8-week ultrasound. So yeah, that was pretty shocking.
No kidding. Like, how did your ultrasound tech even respond to that? I always hear about twins and they're like, oh my gosh, you're going to be shocked. But then to find out there's not only twins, but 4.
I know. So he actually was really silent throughout the whole ultrasound. Having already had ultrasounds prior with my first daughter and being a biology teacher and teaching kids about ultrasounds and showing what that looks like in Bio 30, our curriculum about reproduction and development, I kind of knew what I was looking at right away. And so there was no reason for her to believe that there was going to be a multiple pregnancy, because, again, it was not fertility assisted, and there was no reason for her to not have the camera on right away. But she had the TV on immediately, and then the wand came on, and I could see everything right away, and it was immediately apparent. You could see multiple sacs and multiple fetuses. It was in front of us the very first second she put that wand on my belly, and the room was silent, and she was silent. And I just kind of looked back and forth at my husband. I grab his hand. He's looking back at me, but he doesn't really know what he's looking at. And I'm like starting to breathe faster, and she's still silent. And really quickly, the room felt really a lot of pressure, it was intense. The emotions in that room really quickly. I felt like I was having difficulty breathing. At that moment, she hasn't checked to confirm viability. I haven't seen that there's heartbeats. I just see multiple pregnancies, and this was a wanted pregnancy. And immediately, what I know about high risk pregnancies and multiples is there's a risk of them not surviving. And so I just was like, I want this pregnancy, I want this pregnancy, and now it's in front of me, and are these babies going to be okay, and what is happening? And it was so overwhelming. And after about 5 minutes, I broke the tension and I asked the ultrasound tech, I said, so can you please tell me what we're looking at here? And all she said was, I will have to confirm everything at the end of the ultrasound, but I can tell you that already I'm looking at 3, possibly 4 fetuses. And that's all she said. We were silent. She was silent. And then it was a long ultrasound because it takes a long time to ultrasound 4 babies. So it was about another hour of her being silent and us kind of going back and forth between crying and looking at each other in shock, but we didn't say a word. We couldn't even speak other than maybe, oh my God, oh my God.
Understandable. um,
Yeah.
so were you able to like speak with the radiologist and things like that before you left, or did you have to wait to see your doctor?
Good question. No, we didn't speak to anyone. She actually left for a while. And in that 5-10 minutes that she was showing the radiologist all the pictures and confirming she got everything, my husband and I kind of a little bit started to try to talk through it, but we mostly just cried and were silent. We didn't even know what to say. And at that point, we had seen like heartbeats and measurements, and they all appeared to be, I mean, we're just seeing with our own eyes, she's not saying anything, but we can see that they're far enough along that I think I should be pregnancy. So they look like they're growing on track. They had healthy heartbeats. But she didn't actually tell us anything. A radiologist did not talk to us. She just came in and said, okay, I got everything I need. Your healthcare team will contact you. And so we walk out of there just out into the world and don't know anything. It was wild. I actually have a really great relationship with my family doctor, so I contacted her office right away, and she was able to call me back within an hour. And I was able to hear from my OB as well within the same day. And so I reached out because they hadn't even gotten, the report sent to them through my health records or anything. And it spurred on a lot of conversations really quickly through my healthcare team and getting me into the maternal fetal medicine clinic really quickly. And a lot happened really fast, and yet also nothing happened very fast. I say that because I thought I would have more appointments. And initially, that first trimester, I didn't really have anything for 4 more weeks because they also wanted to wait and see, if the pregnancy was going to remain viable on its own. And there wasn't really any reason to do more scans at that time. And it was kind of just, okay, you're pregnant with quadruplets. We'll get you in soon, but we just kind of have to wait and see what happens. So they give you this news and then they send you on your way and you have to wait 4 more weeks for another scan.
Oh my goodness. I'm so happy that you were able to like know what you were looking at and see those little heartbeats. So not walking out of there being totally blind. Like not many people know to look for that or even know what that looks like. And thankfully, your education and then having scans before helped. But that's pretty scary just to kind of be left in the dark. Was it like after that 12-week scan that you started to have more appointments and things like that? And were you with MFM like right from the get-go then?
Yeah. So
okay.
Quickly, I had phone conversations with my OB and my family doctor. And those phone conversations, and I did actually see my OB right away to, do the regular blood pressure check and regular checks. I had a quick consult with him. And both of those doctors quickly, even before I saw maternal fetal medicine, I have great relationships with them and I completely respect where they're coming from a medical standpoint. But initially, even on, the first, second, third day of us being given this news, they dropped the words selective reduction on us. And it was not the first, or it was not going to be the last time we were going to hear those words. And so selective reduction is something I had never heard of ever, and nothing I ever thought would be coming out of my mouth, and nothing that I thought I would ever have to consider or grapple with. And so selective reduction is, I can understand from a medical standpoint, something that is offered to people in really high risk pregnancies. I can understand where they're offering it, but for me, I just wasn't able to make that decision or to go through with that process. Obviously, I have 4 healthy babies, and I'm so privileged and lucky I do. And I can't imagine my life without them now. But I was surprised at how quickly that came up. I haven't even had time to process this, and I haven't even had time to think about how good this could be. And now they're telling me to consider reducing the pregnancy. They recommended reducing down to twins or a singleton. They said the risks actually don't go down very much if you reduce to triplets, and they would recommend twins or a singleton right away. And so for a month, we're waiting to find out if A, the pregnancy is going to stick and we're going to remain pregnant after the first trimester, or if we should be reducing. And at that point, I didn't have enough information to reduce. There was no reason to reduce in my mind. Everything was healthy at that point, and just my own kind of values and beliefs, I couldn't. So we just had to wait and see. Well, I'm just grappling with this big, heavy kind of weight on my shoulder the whole time from maternal fetal medicine and the OBs and my doctors kind of recommending that.
No kidding. Did they push it a lot, or once you said, I don't think that that's for me, were they kind of supportive of that decision?
You know, they brought it up often. So I had scans at 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 16 weeks, and 19 weeks after that. So to answer your previous question, yes, after 12 weeks, I started getting more and more regular scans. And that included a couple fetal echoes and to check our hearts as well and to do regular growth scans. And every appointment for those first, between 12 and 19 weeks, so 4 or 5 times, they brought it up again and again and again and again. And in my heart, looking back, I know I wouldn't have ever done it anyways. But now that I look back as well, I had kind of decided to approach it as, well, why would I? Like, give me some information about why would I? Like, what is wrong about the pregnancy, or what do you see genetically, or what are the risks? Like, there was no, I was like, well, give me the reasons why and show me. And unfortunately, with multiples or higher order multiples, you can't do the same genetic testing that you can do with singletons or even some twins. So I couldn't do the blood work to test for, genetic abnormalities or anything. I couldn't do an amniocentesis because of the location of their amniotic sacs. I couldn't do a chorionic villus sampling, a CVS either, because of the location of their placentas. So I wasn't able to actually get further testing, and I just was basically looking at their anatomy and how the pregnancy was progressing to make my decision, and nothing about that was telling me to do that. And I just fell more and more in love with my babies as the pregnancy went on, and I just felt more and more protective of my pregnancy as it went on. And I look back now and I wish I could have said even faster, no, absolutely not. But at the time I was like, well, we'll wait and see. But I never, yeah, there was no reason to. And I'm so privileged in that. I don't know what my decision would have been for sure if something had been more abnormal. But I can say now that I don't think I would have reduced anyways, because of where I am. And that comes from a place of privilege with healthy babies for sure. But yeah, it was week 19 when they finally stopped asking. And I firmly said, no. And it's shocking to me also. I understand, and I'm so grateful for our healthcare, especially knowing what's happening down in the States and having, access to women's reproductive healthcare is so important to me here. But I was like watching these babies that were healthy and well, and I was just like, I just was like, at one time at my 19th week scan, I asked one of the doctors, I was like, so which would you reduce? And she couldn't give me an answer. And I was like, well, that's the answer. You can't even tell me which one. So no. Yeah.
I'm proud of you for asking those questions and like asking for the proof and your why. And I say this a lot in a lot of episodes, that a lot of us, and including myself, aren't comfortable enough to kind of push for necessarily asking more questions or really pushing for our beliefs. And like you said, you have a very good relationship with those medical professionals, so you do respect their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I also believe that if you have all 4 healthy babies, like they're there for a reason,
Yeah.
and if they're going to thrive and everything else, you made the perfect decision for you guys. But it's so hard, and like you said, you never know what decision you would have made if other circumstances were brought forward, right? And I think it's a hard thing to grasp, to even try to think of what your decision would be, right?
Exactly. That didn't happen, so I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But now that they're here, I can't even imagine ever not having them. And so, yeah, I'm grateful I was, confident enough and educated enough and had enough experience and resources available to be able to ask those questions for sure. Because I think a lot of women may not have those skills or yeah, confidence to be able to ask that. And that would be really challenging in a healthcare setting where you're kind of forced to make decisions really quickly and life altering decisions, perhaps. So yeah, I am proud of me too.
I think a lot of times too, we're faced with, maybe situations where, the decision is not really our decision to make sometimes in like very unfortunate circumstances, right? And so when you do have the opportunity to control those aspects of your journey and your care and your baby's health and their future, it's so important that we just take that and we run with it and we do whatever we can, right?
Absolutely.
How did they prepare you in like the third trimester for, say, delivery or kind of what life would look like once babes were earthside?
Yeah, so we knew pretty early on that there would be a NICU stay in some capacity. They actually prepared me really early on. A lot of the early consultation, especially that second trimester, was the it was going to be I was going to have premature babies no matter what. I was not going to be able to carry to 40 weeks. There's no instances where babies have quadruplets have been able to be carried to 40 weeks. It's extremely rare to carry them to as far as I did. Um, Over 90% of the pregnancies, this is what maternal fetal medicine told me, over 90% of pregnancies are born before 29 weeks. And so quadruplet pregnancies. So I was prepared for a birth around 29 weeks or likely sooner. 9 times out of 10, it's before that. And so um, around that 25, 26 week mark, I started to feel really pregnant, really uncomfortable. I was as big as a singleton would be at 40 weeks. So I was already pushing my physical limits at 25 weeks. And I was like, oh, this is why a lot of quadruplet pregnancies only go to 28, 29. Like I was done. And then I just kept carrying them and they kept being okay and they kept thriving. A huge blessing about my pregnancy is I had 4 placentas and 4 sacs. So no one ever shared a space, no one shared resources. My body was able to, keep them in with no early labor, no contractions. My cervix didn't, shorten. My body held it together, pregnancy wise, and my babies were able to grow and thrive. But by that 25, 26 week mark, it really got to a point where in any pregnancy, as you nearly end, you're like, it could happen any day now. And it's such a weird feeling if it could happen in 3 hours or 3 days or 3 weeks. And I kind of felt that way for months because they told me it could happen so early. And then as I got further and further along, I get to 26 weeks, I get to 28, I get to 30, which was a huge milestone, beating the odds. Um, they were like, oh, well, we'll schedule your ultrasound or your C-section, excuse me, for 34 weeks. And I was like, what? You think I'm going to go to 34 now? Like, this is crazy. You told me that I probably wasn't going to make it to 29 and now you want me to go to 34? Like, it was crazy. But in a delivery like mine, it obviously is ideal to have it planned in any delivery situation. But the amount of personnel that would be required, the NICU team that was involved, so each baby had 3 people attached to them. So that was 12 people just for the babies. I had additional residents, additional anesthesiologists, additional OBs, and the room had over 21, 22 people, I think, in it, not counting us and the babies. There was nearly 30 people in there. So
Oh
it
my
takes a lot of
goodness.
scheduling. It's a lot of personnel. They want to pick the best personnel and the right people for the job. And so they really wanted it to be scheduled if possible. But of course, if my body had gone into labor early, they would have been able to handle that on an emergency basis. But I was fortunate to be able to make it to my planned C-section date. I made it to 33 weeks and 2 days. And what an amazing team it was. So I have friends who work at the Royal Alex Hospital, and they had been kind of hearing about it for weeks and months before. Everyone had been talking about it. And so I knew that there was a lot going on behind the scenes that I didn't even see in terms of their preparation, where the babies are going to go after, how many people, who's involved. It was quite the event that they had, and it was really, really cool. The day of, when we walked in, everyone was like, "Oh, you're the quads, you're the mom, you're the quadruplets. Oh my goodness, we're so happy you're here." So it felt like a party. It was a celebration. It was so special. I just can't even believe that I get this incredible blessing, this incredibly special story. I can't believe so sometimes like to me, like this is unbelievable. Um, and it's my story, it's my journey, and I'm the lucky mom of these beautiful miracle babies. And so, yeah, lots of work behind the scenes, and just an incredible group of people, incredible nursing team, medicine team. Oh, amazing.
And they'll carry that forever too, hey? Like I even as like just a mom, I was like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. Let alone like obviously that doesn't like quads don't come around every day. And so I
Yeah.
bet that team was pretty excited to be in on the party too, right?
So the last set of quads that was born was in 2016, and that set of quads was also born at the Royal Alex Hospital. I should say the last set that was born in our province, Alberta. And that set was born in the same hospital. And so there was a couple nurses who were there 8 years prior and had remembered those quads, and a couple, along my way through ultrasounds and stuff down in maternal fetal medicine, they're like, oh, I remember them. And that actually is the family I'm related to. So the mom of those quads, I, through my dad's side, my dad's cousin, niece, like I'm related to the mom through blood, through my dad's side of the mom who had those babies in 2016. They're from Heiss, Alberta. They're called the Webb Quads, and they are four identical girls from the Webb family, so Bethany and Tim. And they are 8 years old now, and they're four identical, beautiful babies that were also a spontaneous conception. So similar in ours, spontaneous, same family, 8 years apart, but also different because hers were identical. So one egg that split four times, and
Which
ours
how in
were
the
four
world
different
does
eggs.
that happen?
I know. So there's not a lot of stats on all these probabilities and what ours are, but they say theirs, so the Webb quads, identical quads happen about 1 in 67 million times. So that's what Bethany and Tim quads are. And then ours are, they say, a 1 in 900,000 chance, but of that 1 in 900,000, over 90% of them are due to reproductive assistive technology, which ours were not. So still incredible odds, and incredible odds that we're both from the same family side. Like it's just a miracle. So yeah, pretty crazy that some of the healthcare team had been part of both deliveries in the last 8 years.
Yeah, that's cool. How long were you guys in the hospital? So 32 weeks. That's like very far along, especially having four, obviously.
Yeah.
Like
So
not ideal for a
32 weeks.
singleton,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. So the babies actually were discharged from the Royal Alex before me. They only spent 2 days in that NICU. We were given a whole private room. They had like rearranged an entire pod and made us an entire room, thinking that they might have higher needs and more breathing needs and feeding and breathing kind of concerns, and wanted to give us access to space to come and go. And then within 12 hours, they actually moved us from that and put us back in just a regular pod with other families because our babies were not, didn't need that level of care. So really quickly, they were just little healthy miracles. They didn't need any additional breathing support. They were all on room air and just taking regular NG tubes through their
yeah.
NG tubes by the first day, and they were doing great and thriving. They essentially were grower feeders. They were all born between 4.5 and 5 pounds each. So they were big, healthy babies, and they all were just kind of your typical, yeah, feeder grower. And they were able to be discharged from the Royal Alex, which is kind of a higher level NICU stay. They were able to be discharged in less than 2 days. So they actually were put in ambulances for transport and went to a different hospital on the west end of the city. And they were out before me. And it was funny because my C-section actually went really well. It was like a textbook C-section considering it was four. I've healed well. It was a easy from start to end for my OB. And I'm like walking around the unit, postpartum unit, and I'm like, okay, can I go now? My babies aren't even here anymore. Like, let's get me out of here. And so they were out before me, which is a miracle. They did spend 21 more days in the hospital at the Misericordia, the NICU there. But yeah, again, just learning to eat and getting a little bit bigger. They were discharged by about 36 weeks gestation, and we brought them home.
That's amazing. I was showing a friend of mine yesterday or the day before because I was telling her I'm going to get to speak to you, and she's like, I can't even believe this. And so I pulled up the picture of you holding them in the NICU. I'm like, oh, it's such a miracle. Like, just what I remember my singleton being able to hold him for the first time, and then just seeing you wrap your arms around all four of them. I'm tearing up thinking about
I
it.
know.
Like, so special.
So special. And it kind of happened really quickly. I was able to hold one or two of them at a time often. And I was just there on a regular Monday, like it was 7 days after their delivery. And I was like, can I hold two at a time? And the other nurses were like, do you want to hold all four? And I was like, can I? Yes. And so they unplugged them all. They were able to be, unplugged for a small enough period of time. They brought them all onto me. It happened so fast. I wasn't prepared. I'm like glad someone had a camera and thought to even take a picture and a video, because it happened so fast that I don't even remember the moment. And I look back at that video now and it makes me cry still every single time. It's such a moment that is just, oh, so amazing. And I'll never forget, just being just it was the first time they had all been back together, and it just felt really real. Like, this is four. This is incredible. This is a miracle. I had always held them on their own or only two at a time. It was really big once I held all four.
And they looked so healthy and beautiful right from the get-go. Like, pram babies and sometimes twins, they have that look about them. And I feel like I look at photos of your two boys and two girls, and they're just these perfect little squishy babies.
So lucky. They're so beautiful.
Do you ever like sit there just in awe of yourself that you grew them, you delivered them, and they're here?
Yeah, I do. Most of the time, I mean, all of us can relate as moms. You're just in it, and it's just the same old, and you do the routine. But sometimes I get them in front of me, or I actually feel it often when I'm like step away. I'm like in the kitchen and I look over there and I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of babies over there. Like, that's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy because my 2-year-old, she's such a good big sis. She's almost 3. She's incredible. She's so lovely, so sweet. She's adjusted really, really well. And she comes around and she has their little nicknames, and she comes and kisses and hugs them and she plays with them and tickles them, and it's so cute. And I just think, I'm like, she has no idea how crazy this is. Like, she has no
No.
idea that 4 siblings at once is not normal. And it's so normal to her. It's just like, oh, I just have 4 babies. Like, I have 2 brothers and sisters. So special.
So that would have made her how old when you delivered the 4?
Just under 2.5. Not
Oh,
even quite
girl.
2.5. Yeah, she was. Yeah, I would, if I could go back, I would do it a little bit longer. She was, a 2.5-year-old, and yeah, it was tough. I'm sure it's tough with any transition going from 1 to 2 or 1 to 5. But she, yeah, we're coming into it now. 6 months later, it's getting a lot easier. We have more routines, and all of the big emotions are definitely easier to juggle, and she's really settled into it now. It was tough for the first few weeks, especially juggling NICU life with a toddler at home and being back and forth, and that was challenging for sure. So I'm glad we've settled into a little bit of normalcy now. It's normal as 4 babies can be.
That was one thing I really struggled with, was knowing I needed in quotations to be in 2 places, because I so badly wanted to be with both babies. Obviously, Case needed me a little bit more in that moment, but that ate me alive with the fact that I could not be 2 places at once. How did you juggle that?
Well, I think that we have such a different experience, because right away I couldn't be in 2 places at once. I couldn't hold all the babies at once. I mean, I have a couple times, obviously, but that's not the norm. So
Mm-hmm.
I right away had to rely on nurses to do feeds, nurses to hold, family members to hold. I think having multiples, you really quickly realize, oh, I'm going to need other people anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I got more used to not being able to be everywhere for everyone at all the time quicker, just out of it, that just being the way it was. But man, I remember it was, yeah, really difficult those first few weeks, not being able to be there for bedtime with my daughter all the time, and then trying to get back to the hospital at night after I got her to bed, because I didn't want to miss like bath times or any feeds or anything for our quadruplets, and then going to bed and trying to get some sleep, but feeling like I should be at the hospital, but I need to wake up and be there for my daughter when she wakes up. It was just a terrible feeling, especially being back and forth. But I definitely am more used to having other people pick up and hold my babies than a singleton
Mm-hmm.
mother might feel, because I've had no choice but to have other people pick up my babies and help me all along.
That's a very good point, and normalize that it's okay that other people help out, you know? I feel
Yeah.
like we get so protective of these little babies. We waited so long to meet and
Yeah.
spent so much time growing that it's hard to kind of let someone else take over sometimes. How
Yeah.
did you guys prepare to bring the babies home? Like, did you have any idea how many diapers you would go through and bottles and formula, or bottles if you're pumping and breastfeeding? Like, could you even
Okay,
prepare for
so
that?
in some ways, yes, I'm a planner and very organized and type A, and I just like systems and routine, and that definitely helped as a teacher. Like, I definitely had some skills and experience to be able to organize and navigate and plan for that. So I definitely was able to look up and research and had some experience. I always say if quadruplets had been our first, I don't even know how I would have survived this. Thank goodness I had had a singleton prior, because it gave me so much more confidence going into this next round of parenting. Um, yeah, I wasn't up Googling everything all night like I was the first time, and, checking to make sure they're still breathing every 2 minutes and worrying about every type of color of poop. Like, you just get so much more confidence the second time around.
That is so
Yeah.
true.
But I definitely started planning, where are they going to sleep? What's our plan going to be for where they're going to sleep, how we're going to feed? I knew from talking to other NICU parents that the schedule that the NICU babies come home on is an amazing schedule to stay on, especially parents of multiples, saying just keep them on that schedule. Do not get into the trap of feeding on demand or letting them sleep whenever they want. Make sure that you wake them all up at the same time, you feed them at the same time. We found that out really quickly, and anytime we've fallen off that schedule, it's terrible around here. You just have babies awake 24/7, which means you are awake 24/7. And I'm like,
Yes.
okay. So we started to get some systems in place, and I got all the stuff. I definitely got all the stuff that I needed early. We had amazing people off plan clothing drives and diaper drives, and got so many hand-me-downs and so many donations for formula and diapers and things. But I didn't plan the people piece right away. I thought we might be able to juggle it better by ourselves or our small family friend group than I anticipated. And so that is an incredible lesson in what has really, it's just, I've been so blown away by my community, close and far. They say it takes a village to raise a baby, and I don't think a lot of women have that village, and I don't think a lot of women of singletons, especially even twins, even triplets, maybe have that village, because the world expects, oh, it's one baby, you should be able to handle that. Like, everybody has one baby, and they should be able to handle that. But with quadruplets, I realized pretty quickly that I was going to need people and help. And so the first week or so, we just kind of tried to juggle it with some of our, like, cousins, parents, family, things like that. But we realized we were going to burn them out really quickly if they were the only ones helping us. And it still wasn't going to be enough people in helping right in the trenches with us. So my sister-in-law actually made a schedule. It's an editable Google spreadsheet, and we shared it with friends and family near and far, who shared it with their friends, who shared it with their family. And my village is massive compared to what I ever thought I would have. I have nearly 60, 70 people on this spreadsheet who are consistently showing up at least once a month, often once a week, often twice a week. The same people are coming back, and they're offering 2-3 hours at a time here. And they're signing up for times that they're available, and they are free to come, and they've cleared out their schedule to be there for those blocks of time. And the best part about that system is that it's not me at 2 a.m. panic calling, looking at my phone list, being like, who can be here in 5 minutes when I needed help 5 minutes ago, because no one can drop everything on the moment and show up right then and there when you need them. But if it's booked into their schedule and they know that they're coming tomorrow from 9 till 12, like, it's been an incredible system, and it's something I would recommend for any family, even of singletons or twins or triplets, especially if there's other older kids in the family, to have like sign up and people sign up and consistently keep showing up. I can't see why it wouldn't work for other families too. because people keep showing up and keep walking in that door and picking up babies and getting spit up on and getting pooped on, literally, and puked on. And oh, they just keep walking in that door with a smile on their face and they're ready and roaring to go because it's, only 3 hours of their week. And this village has stepped up and helped me and like saved me on some of my darkest days so many times where I thought I could not last one more minute. They keep showing up and they keep walking in that door. And so I didn't plan the people part until about a week or two after bringing them home. And now my biggest recommendation for parents of multiples is you'll figure out the stuff, plan your people, plan your village, make a spreadsheet, let people sign up around the clock to be there so that you can look at that sheet. I look usually just one day ahead at a time, and I'm like, okay, tomorrow I've got this person here from 9 to 12, this person from 12 till 2, this person. And it's just like a breath, like where I can take a breath and I can take that weight off of me and be like, okay, I can get through the night because no matter what happens, someone's walking in that door at 7 a.m. And it saved me.
That is an amazing idea. I've never heard of that, never thought of it myself. That is so nice to have. How do you, do you ever, I'm asking this because I'm an overstimulated human being. Do you ever get overstimulated of having someone else in your space though? Or are you able to take moments for Tara in those moments?
So yes, I am especially sensory stimulation, sound, light, clutter, stuff, touch. I definitely get overstimulated very quickly. So yeah, I can relate to that. It means I do a lot of small talk all the time. Every few hours, a new person's here, and I'm like, oh, how was your weekend? How are you? How's it going? How's this? Like, I do a lot of small talk, and in some ways, it keeps things light around here. And it's fresh. It's always a fresh person who's excited and has energy, like I mentioned. So even if I'm exhausted, they keep the vibes good, if that makes sense. But man,
that totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's exhausting having someone, a revolving door of people in all the time. And, you're making sure these are people that are healthy. They're not coming when they're sick. They're not coming if anyone in their household is sick. That was really important to me with preemies. But yeah, there were so many times I wanted space and I wanted no one to walk in that door, but the alternative was more overwhelming. Not having people help is worse than having too many people here all the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we're starting to find pockets of time now as they've finally become better sleepers. There's times throughout the day where there's no one here anymore. Nap time, 12 hours overnight, that kind of thing. I have my space back. But throughout the day, I'm so grateful people keep showing up.
Oh, that's so special. How did you, God, where do I want to start? Feeding or sleeping? You tell me.
Feeding. So feeding is so different. I had an exclusively breastfed baby who would not take a bottle, my first baby. And you feed on demand. That means sometimes you feed and then 20 minutes later you feed again, and then in 2 hours, and then in 10 minutes, and then in 3 hours. It was so easy in that sense. Like, it was so kind of intuitive, and she just kind of led the way. But we realized we were going to need to feed right away, or right away, all at the same time right away. And at the time, it was really important to me because I'd had such a really good breastfeeding experience the first time. I was like, I'm going to breastfeed these babies. I'm going to breastfeed 2 at a time. And then someone else will bottle feed the 2, and then I'll switch next time. And I had it in my head that this was just going to work, because why wouldn't that just work? And I realized really quickly that was really challenging. Having a preemie is very different than a full-term baby learning how to breastfeed. It takes them a lot longer to learn how to breastfeed. They have to work so much harder. They get more tired. It was so much work. I had to triple feed them. So I would feed and latch 1 or 2 at a time. And then I was still going to have to pump after to keep my supply up and pump milk, and then also top up with formula. So it was just like, it was really hard. I really lowered my expectations a few weeks into my NICU stay, after being like, this isn't even possible in the hospital with nurses here to tube feed and bottle feed them. How is this going to be possible at home? But I did keep up with direct latching and breastfeeding 1 or 2 at a time for several weeks afterwards as well, a few times a day. I kind of just took the weight off and was like, you know what, I'll pump the rest of the times, and I'll give formula the times that my pump milk doesn't meet their requirements. And we'll just see how long this goes. And so I would try to breastfeed 2 if I had help to bottle feed the other 2, and we'd try to do that all at the same time. So their wake windows were all the same, and we'd put them down for sleep all at the same time. And if I just wanted to pump or breastfeeding wasn't going well, I would just give them bottles and we would feed all four by bottles. Um, and that lasted for quite a while until, yeah, several weeks in, I was like, I got to drop the breastfeeding. Like, this is getting too hard because now I have to go pick up this baby or this bottle fell or this happened or this spit up. I need to grab a burp cloth. My 2-year-old needs something. It was too hard breastfeeding directly than bottle feeding, where I could just pop the bottle out and give the baby a break. And so I released that pressure that no one had put on me but me to try. And I went to just exclusively pumping and topping up with formula as needed. And that went really well until it didn't. Worked really well for about 3-4 months until they stopped sleeping and hit that dreaded 4-month sleep regression. And I couldn't even find time to pump anymore because I was literally holding a baby to try to rock them back to sleep 24/7. So it was actually physically impossible to even get a pump on me at the same time as I have 1 or 2 babies on me at the same time. So my pumping journey slowly started to end when their sleep started to end. And by about 5.5 months, I was done pumping and had moved exclusively to formula feeding. And I look back and I'm like, oh, I should have done that so much sooner. It's so much easier. They're so happy. They're well fed. They are so taken care of. Ugh, I put a lot of pressure on myself to breastfeed and to pump for too long. And I'm grateful I did it. I'm glad and I'm proud of my body for making as much milk as it did. I had a great supply, but I'm also so glad to be done.
Proud of you for how long you did that. And that's such a good point. The expectation that nobody put on you except for yourself. I think we can, majority of us can relate to that. And even I've talked to some friends that even before they had their babies, we're absolutely formula feeding. Breastfeeding is just not something I want to do. And then after, there's still a little bit of guilt that's kind of associated with it, right? Which again, it's just an expectation we put on ourselves most of the time. And I mean, I've always been able to breastfeed and I'm very grateful for that. But then there's also sometimes that I get so overstimulated by always having a baby on the boob. I'm like, oh God, sometimes I
Yeah,
just wish, so
yeah,
it's a catch-22 either way, I feel like.
totally.
Um, how did you specifically deal with the sleep regression of you were not sleeping?
Yeah. So we eventually paid for some overnight help. So we would get some help, um, usually for 6 to 8 hours at night. And usually that would mean I could sneak away for about 4 or 5 hours of that. So I would, at best, get a 4 or 5 hour chunk of sleep. But it wasn't always 4 or 5 hours because I'd often have to pump in there. I was still pumping every 3 hours, 4 hours overnight. But it allowed me to get some sleep, and that was at a cost. I had to pay a lot of money every month to do that, just to get some sleep at night. Um, but thank goodness I did, because without it, I don't think I would have survived that any other way. My mental health would have taken way worse and way quicker. So I'm grateful we did pay for some pay. We did have some overnight help for about 12 weeks. Um, how did I get through it? Help, people walking in that door. I cried a lot. I had cried while holding babies, while people were holding my other baby or babies. And they were like, "Okay, they will. They're not going to be awake forever. We've got
Yeah.
this." And having someone beside me helped. My husband, my friends, my family. People just kept walking in that door and picking up babies, and we just did what we had to do to survive to get through that regression. We did eventually lead to sleep training, in some capacity to, get them to stay asleep independently. The NICU always made it so that they fell asleep independently really well, but they woke up every 20, 30 minutes and not all at the same time. So it was every 5 minutes someone was waking up for 24 hours straight. So I got through it with people and help. And honestly, I also got through it with medication. So I went on an antidepressant medication. I went to both my doctor at the lowest point I had ever felt. The intrusive thoughts really came in, the lack of sleep, the sleep deprivation. I had never had those thoughts as a mom. I think a lot of women think that they could never think those things, and it just it's out of your control. Your body is not your own, and I felt safe enough to approach that with my family doctor, and she sent me to a referral to a psychiatrist, and I had a wonderful appointment with one who, really listened and heard me and took care of me and said, you're not going to be on these medications forever. and it's going to take the edge off. And it did. It definitely has. And so support to get out of the house and go for walks and to take medication, to exercise, to take breaks and step away so other people can come and help the babies. All of those things helped me survive those really, really dark weeks and months. And I definitely am an advocate for reaching out to your doctors. I see a therapist as well. And yeah, don't be afraid to be honest about where you're at. It doesn't make you a bad mom or to it doesn't say you failed. In fact, I think that there's a lot of power and strength that comes from asking for help and to be brave enough to do something that will help you because it'll help your babies in the long run too.
Thank you so much for sharing such a vulnerable thing. I too got to a very low point back in November, December, and I feel very strongly. I did not know I was in that point until I sat down with my therapist, and she was like, "Girlfriend, like,
Yeah.
you need the help," because I was on antidepressants and benzos and everything else after my stillbirth, came off of them to get pregnant again. And then same thing, intrusive thoughts when I got home from the NICU. They were so scary because I never, ever had that before. And they aren't your thoughts. It was so weird. And just, I was disassociating so bad and things like that. And I had been prescribed medication, again, a new one, back in August. And I was just so scared. And I'm like, it's just another thing I don't want to have to do. And I made the mistake in my session of saying, I just want to be a normal person. She's like, well, what is that? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I went on medication as well. And I didn't realize I could feel, in quotations, as good as I do now. Like, I still have a lot of work to do, but definitely taking the edge off. And it doesn't have to be a permanent thing.
No.
But
Agreed. Yeah.
yeah, thank you
I
for sharing that. Even just for me, I'm like, okay, someone else went through that.
Totally. And many of my friends have. You think you're alone and this is the only one this is happening to. And I think the more we
Mhm.
talk about it, the more you realize you are not alone. Postpartum rage is also something that hit me hard. I felt so out of control in so many of those situations that the intrusive thoughts would be intense, and then I wouldn't be able to control the intrusive thought. So it would come out as rage, and I would have to put my baby down, and I would have to walk to a room and slam my fist on my bed and scream into a pillow. And that's scary. That's something I didn't know was a thing and
Mhm.
normal. Not normal. It's not normal, but it's typical. It happens. And the medication has helped that. I don't feel that way anymore. And yeah, it it's okay. Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those things that you hear about, but you're like, well, that'll never happen to me. It won't be me. And then the hormones hit you, plus you're not sleeping, plus you're trying to catch up to all of these expectations you set on yourself in a very unfamiliar situation. And then when you're showing up as someone you've never met before, it is so scary. And to be aware of it enough to know to walk away, that shows strength in itself too, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
I can't say I'm proud of you enough, I swear. When you started the sleep training, did you notice improvement quite quickly? How did you approach that with 4 babies?
Oh, I was so overwhelmed. Where do I even begin? Like, how are we going to do this? Are we going to do it all in the same room? Are their cries going to keep each other awake? How are we going to do this? I was really resistant to get rid of the pacifier. And then I realized really quickly that the pacifier was a problem because it would fall out and they couldn't get it back in and they'd wake up. And as soon as I'd pop it back in, they would go back to sleep. So I was like, well, this isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wanted to wait and wait and wait because they were preemies and I was trying to wait till a little further as an adjusted age, and I wanted to see if the regression would kind of work its way out and they would start sleeping longer stretches naturally on their own anyways. I just kind of waited and waited and waited and suffered and suffered and suffered, and they started suffering. There was one day where I was like, they're not having full feeds because they're so exhausted and cranky during the day that their wake windows are all messed up because they are so tired from themselves and them waking each other up and them up themselves up nonstop that I couldn't even get full feeds or full bottles in them. So they were waking up tired, they were waking up cranky, they were cranky while they were awake. I was like, they're not going to grow if they can't sleep and they can't eat. And I need these babies to grow and they need to be healthy and well. And so I started to realize, what am I waiting for? And we got to about 5 months adjusted, or about 4.5 months adjusted. And one day, my husband and I had been in their room 15 times in the first hour that we had put them down. And this was after like following all the right wake windows and doing all the right things all day and doing a bedtime routine and having, all the things that they say you're supposed to do. But we had been in their room 15 times and we were trying to make dinner for our daughter and us. And we looked at each other after the first hour and we are like, what are we waiting for? Like, I cannot wait one more minute. So we pulled out the pacifiers and we set a timer and we just listened for the type of cry, and we listened and followed our judgment and our intuition. If they became hysterical, which didn't happen very often. Oftentimes I describe it as kind of a protest, like hey, come back here. Why am I alone? Like, they were like yelling at us, but they weren't actually hysterical. Or oftentimes we'd say, those aren't even tears. Like, you're just shouting at us. And I reminded myself, like, babies, they would shout at me in the van. They shout at me in the car seat. They shout at me all the time. They were safe. They were fed. They were taken care of. And we needed to help them sleep so that they could grow and they could feel better. So really quickly, we found immediately 2 of our 4 just slept the rest of the night. I am not kidding when I say they slept for 12 straight hours. They just slept through. And 2 of them carried on back and forth for about 90 minutes, never at the same time. I think that would have been really overwhelming. But one of them would start and cry for about 4, 5, 6 minutes, and then they'd stop. And then the other would cry for 4, 5, 6 minutes, and then they'd stop. And in the meantime, we might check on them a couple times. We would check to make sure that, they're not wedged up against the crib rails, or we'd make sure they hadn't peed or pooped or puked. And we're doing things to check that they're healthy, safe, clean, dry fed. But we were not popping the pacifier back in. We were not rocking them all the way back to sleep like they had been gotten used to. And night 1 was the hardest, took about 90 minutes, and then they all slept through the night. Shocking. And night 2 took about an hour, and then night 3 took about 40 minutes and 20 minutes and 7 minutes. And then now we truly do put them down, and they happily just wiggle and smile and turn over or roll, and they just go to sleep. And now every single morning I wake them up, and I wake them up 90% of the time, and they just have smiles on their faces, and they're happy, and they're good, and they're growing, and it's been good.
It's better for everybody involved.
It is, yes. I would have loved to have, co-slept and bed shared and done all those things that might work for other people. If that's what works for you, it wouldn't work for me. There was no safe way I could have done that with my situation. And it wasn't going to work for our family. And so I respect other people's ways of approaching sleep. And I just hope other people respect our way of approaching sleep too. It's good.
100%. And like you said, intuition and everything, your babies cry. Like half the time Case is just yelling at me to yell at me. I'm like, dude, that's not your hungry cry. That's not your sleepy cry. What are you doing? Like, you just want to chat.
I know if they need a burp. I know if they need poop. I know if they are hungry. I know if they're just mad. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's totally using your intuition, and your baby best. And we did that with our first daughter. There was a few nights, and again, we checked the baby camera, like, okay, you're totally fine. You're literally just yelling into the air. And then, if it was prolonged, okay, are you wet, dry, puke, poop? Like, and they have certain cries when certain things happen, and just to listen to that. And obviously babies have bad nights like we have bad nights, and I think we're bound to kind of run into that, but at the end of the day, everybody needs the sleep.
We do. Yeah, exactly.
How many diapers would you say you go through in a day?
Less now. Holy, at the beginning, we had about 60 a day at the beginning. 50 to 60 a day, and now about 30 a day.
That's still crazy.
So it's much less, but it is a lot of diapers. We fill a diaper bag every single day. Like, our diaper genie, diaper pail is full every single day. Our City of Edmonton waste garbage bin for collection every week or every 2 weeks is full. Like, it's just diapers. It's alarming. So yeah, a lot of diapers, a lot of wipes, a lot of diapers, a lot of diaper cream. Holy, diaper cream. I did not anticipate. That stuff is expensive.
I just assumed the diapers and the wipes. I didn't even think of the other stuff.
Me too. I have an Amazon subscription where I get 4 like big diaper cream tubs every month. Like it's just alarming. It's just so much diaper cream and we don't even use it all the time. It's just only when we think we need it or a couple times a day. And holy, that was surprisingly we go
Yeah, I
through a
guess
lot of
it's one
that.
of those things. If you look at how much you use for a singleton, you basically just times up by 4, which is
Exactly.
crazy. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, I think that the amount of diapers you have, maybe not necessarily alarming. We know you're taking care of all the babies.
Yeah.
They are
Exactly. Yeah.
clean.
They are clean. Yeah.
What does like a day in a life look like for you with them? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
super scheduled. A lot of parents probably wouldn't know what that is like, especially if you have older kids and you just kind of put your baby in the car seat or the stroller and you go do all of your errands and take the other big kids out and about. We don't do a lot of that. So day in the life, it usually starts at 7 a.m. I have to wake them up most mornings. Would I like them to sleep longer if they wanted to? Yes, probably. But does that set everything off throughout the rest of the day? Yes. So that means that I get almost at least an hour typically before my toddler wakes up, where I can be with just the babies. And I often have help in the morning as well. But even if I don't, it gives me an hour to feed the babies, be with the babies, deal with babies, start my day with them. They usually are awake for about an hour and a half, a little longer. We get them down for a nap, and then I deal with our toddler. We do breakfast. We spend time together. We make her lunch. She attends the daycare most days of the week. Some days we just keep her home if it works. We also do some other activities and extracurricular stuff with her where we keep her home extra days of the week, so we get some one-on-one time with her. But we, yeah, just kind of have a routine. Babies wake up at certain times from their naps. We have very strict wake windows. We are slaves to the schedule because it works for us. We don't leave the house very often, which is starting to feel like Groundhog Day. Not starting to, it's always kind of felt like Groundhog Day, meaning every single wake window, every 2 hours, it's the same thing on the same part of our house. It's even hard to take them to other parts of the house. I remember with my singleton, I would take her to the kitchen, then I would take her to the family room, then I'd go to her room and we'd play in our room and we were moving around the house a lot, but I can't. There's 4 babies and all their stuff all the way around the house all the time. So we spend a lot of time on our main floor. It's hard to get out of the house, especially with short wake windows and not wanting them to fall asleep in my car because I need those crib naps so that I can survive and get things done. It's not like a singleton where I can put the baby in the carrier and go about my day, or I can leave a baby on the playmat for a little bit and go do some dishes or flip a load of laundry over. I can't do that. Once the babies are awake, it is full on. We can't leave them. There's so much, you know, one baby might be fine for 10 or 15 minutes, but the other isn't, and you're switching and you're picking up and you're putting down. It's so full on when they're awake that there is no break when they're awake. And the routine, we pick up our daughter between 4ish, 5ish, and we grab her for the evening. And that's our busiest wake window, that last wake window of the night, witching hour for every family. Typically, that dinner time wake window is loud and busy, trying to feed babies, trying to feed our toddler, give baths for all of them if it's bath night, get them into bed. And at 7, 8 p.m., I sit back and I'm like, wow, what just happened? Like, that was a lot. We did everything and we did nothing, if that makes sense. But
It
it is a
does,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is your husband working out of the house then 5 days a week?
He's a shift worker. He's a firefighter, so he has a different
Oh, okay.
schedule,
Yep.
days and nights, and some days home. But yeah, he's not always here, and yeah, so I keep relying on that village to keep showing up and to keep walking in that door.
Thank
Yeah,
goodness.
seriously.
Um, what was I gonna ask you? Oh, I was going to ask you, so I read something before when I was kind of looking into your story, and this is like back in the summer when I was passing hours in the NICU.
Yeah,
Um, and they used to, maybe back in the day, like financially help out families with multiple babies. Is
yeah,
that still a thing? Or I read that now that IVF is a big thing, that they don't do that because of multiples in transfers.
yeah. So no, we get no additional support just for having
Wow.
multiples. The Canadian Child Benefit that every
Yep.
parent has access to based on your income, and we have access to that as well for 5 children instead of 1 or 2. And it is
Okay.
based on our income. So, I mean, we have the same amount that every parent is entitled to just for 5 children. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a huge relief that I didn't anticipate. It's still it's a small sum of money. It's way, way, way less than what my, income is as a teacher, way less. but it's taking the edge off. It pays for our formula each month, it pays for that kind of stuff. But otherwise, there's no additional support at all. We spoke to many social workers. The maternal fetal medicine hospital referred us to a social worker. We talked to her, tried to find some extra supports, and the biggest recommendations she could give us is the Edmonton Twin and Triplet Club, and find your local care with your Twin and Triplet Club, see if there's anyone who can support you with terms of donations and borrowing items and things like that. But no, financially, there's no other additional support. And I'm on EI, which is our employment insurance benefit, obviously, having been a teacher prior. But I only get one EI, and I'm technically.
And it's the same as everyone else.
As everybody else, which is not much. Everybody who's on EI knows it's not very much. And I'm, paying for 5 children at once on one EI payment. And yeah, I joke like they are making money off of me because I'm going to keep paying EI dues for the rest of my life. But I only went on 2 EIs and 2 maternity leaves, even though I have 5 babies and should have had 5 maternity leaves. So they made money off of me. But
oh my God, I didn't even think about that. I know, I was saying it to my mother-in-law the other night because I'm like, oh, am I going to go back to work? Am I not? Kind of thing. I'm like, well, we really need to decide if we're going to have one more baby so then I can at least go get my hours, because it doesn't matter if I make this much or this much, I'm going to max it out. And someone who's made half of what I've made is still going to get the max amount. I'm like, it doesn't make sense at all.
No,
and the amount that you put into it, it's so angersome. But then I try not to be bothered, because then I look at the States and I'm like, could you imagine going back to work at 6 weeks?
I couldn't. We are
not
so
in my wildest dreams.
I know.
Yes.
It's hard to complain. And I have a lot of, new followers on our social media that, ask about that situation. And we are so lucky we have what we have. And I am so grateful that I am paying EI dues for other mothers to go have time off and away from with their families, because this is an amazing part of our social system for sure.
What will, are you, and you don't have to answer this if you haven't told work, but do you plan on going back after your 12, 18 month mat leave, or do you, what does daycare look like for you now?
Good question. So I do plan on going back to work. I have to. Once my EI runs out, we can't afford this. We can't. We just can't. I've looked at the numbers and it's physically impossible. It can't happen. So I have to work. And I love my job too. And it's more than a job to me, right? I love my job and I love what it does for me as a person, as a mom. And I love that I get to go be someone outside of this house, and I get to show my kids that they can go and do something that they love and they're passionate about. And it's hard and challenging, but makes them as well. I want to model that too. And I know that can look different in many different occupations and ways as well. But I'm excited to go back to work just for that. But also, it's my pension, it's my benefits, it's my future. I have to think about it as well, that, I worked so hard for a continuous contract. And as a teacher, I can't just go, I would have to start from the bottom again if I wanted to go back one day. And it doesn't make sense to lose my contract. So I'm going back to work. I'm excited for it, but I also have to. And so the tricky part is, my husband being a shift worker and a firefighter, he can't just miss work all the time. I can't just miss work all the time as a teacher. I can't miss work when my kids are sick. I can a little bit. We have 3 family sick days a year as a teacher. That's it.
Which is not a lot, even with one child.
Burn up in 1 month. I know. And now I have 5 children that are going to be sick all the time. That's just what happens. Mm-hmm. And so we now are going to have to get a live-in nanny, because I do anticipate, and I hope to send them to daycare as well. We fortunately are low enough in an income bracket that we qualify for all the full subsidies and grants for daycare. So it's affordable to send all of our kids to daycare. Another great thing about Canada right now.
Yes.
So I plan to send them to daycare, but I also need a nanny, because there's going to be a lot of days they're too sick to go to daycare, and I can't stay home with them because I'm a teacher and there's no subs, and I can't make sub plans on the fly, and I have to go to work. So we'll have a nanny who's here to help us, and that's an expensive cost that there's no help with. That comes straight out of our personal pocket, and something I didn't anticipate, but that's the plan for now.
Yeah, we were in the same boat. My husband works away, and then when he is home, he has a million other jobs he does. But I'm a shift worker too, and for a while there, when we were both going full-time over full-time, the only thing that makes logical sense is a nanny.
Yeah.
And then you look into it and they want the same wage an hour that I'm making as a nurse. I was like, yeah,
I
I'm not
know.
working for free. Like, I would rather stay on, like, I'm a better mom and a better person because I work. I feel
Yeah.
like I will always work. I'll have to do
Me too.
something anyway. And the adult conversation, you know? I taught
Hmm.
my kids to tell me wonderful stories, but it's not, you know what I
Agreed.
mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. And then, I mean, we're very privileged to be in a position that we are, financially, given everything that's going on in the world. And
Hmm.
so to even reflect on someone who's not in the position and that they don't have a lot of help either financially from the government and things like that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that was one of my big questions for you because I feel
Yeah.
like with
I think a
this,
lot
and
of
then,
people assume we must get help. We didn't even get, like, Pampers didn't even give us anything. Huggies didn't even give us anything. Like, no one's giving us things. Like, that's not how this works. And you don't just have quadruplets and the government just doesn't send you money. We qualify for the same subsidies and grants and same stuff as everybody else. And yeah, that was a shock to me too. I really
I
had
thought
to.
for sure the little diaper companies would be sending you free stuff. I guess you have to have 1 million plus followers to do that.
Probably. Yeah, we're too little over here. Yeah.
Yeah, you were going through 50 diapers a day. You could have used a box or two.
Exactly.
I'm just looking to make sure that I asked you everything I kind of wanted to.
Yeah.
I think I did. Oh, I wanted to ask your cousin, you did say that was a natural conception, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay. I think you did. That is so
Yeah.
crazy to me.
It is so crazy. I know.
And you
I
were the
know.
sixth woman in
Okay.
Alberta or Canada?
So Alberta that they know of, and I don't really know where that stat came from. CBC or Global, one of the news outlets. The journalist told me that. She looked it up. I don't know where she got that stat from because I never heard that from maternal fetal medicine or anything. I was like, oh, am I? Like, that was cool.
Hmm.
There's been, yeah, I think 4 sets in the last 20 years. Um, and only 2 of those were spontaneous, I think. That's, again, what the journalist told us. They say 6 ever recorded. And again, Canada has some different kind of um, rules on how many embryos they'll transfer in terms of IVF and things like that compared to what some clinics will do in the States and in other parts of the world. So our stats are a little different than the stats in the States and in other parts of the world in terms of like amount of quadruplets or higher order births as well. So anything that you see online, I did hear from maternal fetal medicine, if you see the stats of triplets or quadruplets or quints in the States, assume that it's a fraction of that here because we often have higher, stricter standards with our artificial technology.
Yeah, and I believe that especially how many times they offered you to maybe not carry all 4, right? And that was kind of an initial thing to bring up. So, and I feel IVF has become such a big thing in the last several years. I would get last several years, I think. I'm just
Yeah,
more aware of it now that I know more people that
yeah,
struggle with infertility and things like that. And so, yeah, they would have to set out those standards. I interviewed an IVF mom the other day, and I just had it in my head that people automatically just transferred a couple babies or embryos, I guess, to hopefully higher percentage of
God,
them sticking
yeah.
or because they want twins. She's like, that is not true. I'm like, okay, so I made that up. I don't know if I'm the only
No,
one that thought that.
yeah, me too.
But
I would
yeah,
have
no,
thought
she
that
said,
too.
yeah. And she said that a clinic she was at, they would tell you, no, we're only transferring X amount,
Yeah,
depending
or
on quality
one.
and things like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Which I mean, makes sense. But yeah, is there anything else that you would is burning on your heart to share? You've
I
had so many good points.
I was so scared. I was so scared, and I didn't ever really let myself explore the possibility that it could be anything but hard or bad or scary until later in my pregnancy. And I think a lot of moms can relate to that, especially if you've experienced infertility or loss. It's really hard to not always kind of be waiting for the other shoe to drop or wait for, it's really hard to actually fully trust your body sometimes and trust the process and trust that your baby's going to be okay until they're in your arms. I I had a different experience than a lot of women who experience loss, but I was scared until the very end about how this was going to work out. And I wish I could go back now. And of course, hindsight is 2020. I wish I could go back and tell that mom that me, a year ago, finding out I was pregnant with quadruplets last January. I wish I could tell her it was going to be okay because I was very scared. And, you know, that comes from a place of huge privilege. I have healthy babies. I'm holding healthy babies in my arms, but also it was going to be okay no matter what. It was going to be okay. It worked out and it happened the way it was supposed to happen. It's okay. Everything is going to be okay. So I just also was scared. How am I ever going to do this? How am I ever going to split my attention, my love? And you just do. Like when you move from one baby to two or two to five or one to five in my situation, you think, how is it possible that I'm ever going to be able to love my toddler as much as my baby and vice versa? And you just do. And your heart has this immense capacity just to love your babies and your children and to do things and to do what you thought was going to be impossible. It's hard. It's so hard. And yet it's okay and things are okay. And I am so lucky and I'm so blessed to be holding these happy, perfect, healthy babies. And I just am proud of my body. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of my story for sure. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to share a little bit of my journey. And as a mom of multiples who's wondering, or someone pregnant with twins or triplets or quadruplets, like you're wondering how you're ever going to be able to do it, you will. Somehow you will because you're a good mom and you can do it.
You just figure it out, right? One thing I did want to ask you actually is how did you physically feel after delivering them? So obviously I've seen your pregnant belly all the way to the end, and you were carrying between 16 to 20 pounds in that. You're a petite woman. Okay,
Yeah.
we just need to first start there, preface it.
Yeah.
These babies didn't have very many places to go. How was that physically for you after losing,
Oh my
that
goodness.
extra weight, the extra stretch? Like,
I gained 75 pounds in 33 weeks. It was crazy. It was so much weight. I carried nearly 19 pounds of just baby, and the rest was placentas and fluid and blood and everything else. I was so stressed. I was so stressed. My feet, I couldn't get dressed anymore. I could not walk more than the length of my house or driveway. I couldn't get socks or shoes on. I had difficulty breathing. My heart began having what are called PACs or premature atrial contractions. I was basically having extra heart rate every minute, 3 to 5 additional heartbeats every minute, 20,000 extra heartbeats a day. It was just unbelievable, like the immense weight and stress on my body. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sit. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything. By the end, I say if you made me be pregnant one more day for $1 million, I would actually not be able to do it. So instantly, the second my C-section began, I felt immediately better. I cannot even describe it. I felt terrible until immediately I felt incredible. I felt so much better the second those babies were out. And the C-section recovery is no joke. I've now done a vaginal delivery and a C-section, and they are both just a lot. And yet also I was just so grateful they were out because I couldn't have done even another hour, let alone another day with them. So yeah, physically I was sent.
no kidding. That's totally understandable. Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us. It was truly an honor to be able to talk with you today. I was so excited to be able to connect. And if other moms want to follow your quad journey, where can they find you?
Okay, so I started what I thought was going to be a small Instagram page. When the
It's
baby,
not.
I know, when I thought I was going to be pregnant with quadruplets, I wanted to share our story. I like writing and sharing our story is a way of reflecting for me and kind of story keeping. And I often look back at my old posts and I'm like, wow, look how far we have come. Like I really like it. So I use it a bit as a storyteller. I'm either all or nothing. I either share everything for a week or I'm silent for a week. But we have an Instagram account called at Emmy Lou's Quad Squad. So Emmy is our nearly 3-year-old daughter. We named it after her because one thing that's really important to me is the quads get a lot of attention. They get a lot of attention anywhere we go. They get a lot of attention now. And I never want her to grow up and feel, overshadowed by them. And I want her to feel like this is her story too. And she is just as special of a member of our family as those 4 miracle babies are too. And she loves it. She loves her babies. She calls them her babies. And so it really is her quad squad, and it's really fun. So we named it after her. My name is Tara. Her name is Emmy. People sometimes message me and they're like, "Hi, Emmy," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's not me, but yeah, there we go." So Emmy Lou's Quad Squad on Instagram. We share some reels and stories. I often also share a little bit of the reality of, actual multiple life. And if they wanted to
Which
follow us
is
on there,
very
they could.
appreciated.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I
definitely
enjoy
not
seeing
always.
what you're doing
Yeah, thank you.
and sharing those beautiful babies. I
Yeah,
was laughing at your post the one day when you said they're so easy to tell apart. I was like looking like, are they?
I know. That's very, biased of me to say. I understand. And it invites a lot of, opinions. That's something I wasn't prepared for. I'm a teacher, so all of my social media in the past have been very private, and I have separate private accounts. This I'm very careful and intentional about what we share for family and privacy reasons. But it's crazy. Social media's impact. I thought this was going to be a little account that, some of our friends and family members and their friends could follow. And all of a sudden we're at nearly 40,000 followers. And I every day get dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of comments of people who feel like they have a right to tell me how to parent and what I should do. And I'm like, okay, do you have quadruplets? And do you know what to do here? Because I don't think so. And yeah, a lot of people make a lot of assumptions, but most of the time, 95% of the time, I would say people are good and curious and sweet and supportive. And that's been a really cool part of our social media journey too.
Yeah, social media can either go either way. And nowadays, maybe it's because social media is a bigger thing. And we got a bunch of what I call keyboard warriors out here that
Oh, yeah.
give their opinion. And like I said in the beginning, it's hard to put yourself in a position to imagine what you would have done in someone else's shoes, but all these people
Exactly.
believe that what they would have done would have been better. Like, okay,
Exactly.
well, when you have 4 babies at one time, you can tell me.
Exactly. Or maybe even not then, because I also wouldn't tell another quadruplet family what to do either.
No. Oh my God. I say
Yeah.
that about a stillbirth mom all the time. And I'm like, I would never tell you how to celebrate or not celebrate that or grieve a
Exactly.
certain way or not. And it doesn't change if you have living children. Like
No.
our babies
What
are
we
such different
do, it's
people.
so different. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm
exactly.
always taking it as like a learning opportunity. Like, what is this mom
Mm,
doing? Is it working? Is it not?
yes.
If it's not, here, maybe try this. Or I'm taking that because that's working really good. And
Yes.
that's really what I want this space to be, is a place to learn and reflect
Yes.
and just support. And
Yes.
yeah, I don't have time for negative comments. I'm too
Me too.
busy.
I get lots of people, parents of twins and triplets or quadruplets even, that are like, okay, you're making me see that this is possible. And I think I actually really clung to that at the beginning too. When we found out about the quads, one of the first things I did that night while I'm, sent home from that ultrasound and I'm just sent into the world, and now you're pregnant with quadruplets, go back to work the next day and pretend nothing's wrong. I got on Instagram and I started looking up quadruplet families, and I was like, how are they doing this? What does this look like? And I got a lot of like, okay, they're doing it. They're handling it. Look at those babies. They're growing. They're okay. Like, we could do this. So I kind of, like you said, share to show, to share for other people to learn, be curious, and for, other parents of multiples to look at us and be like, hey, that is something I might try. Or to say, that's not going to work for us. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just a cool way to reflect back.
Yeah.
Well, you look great for having 4 babies, 5
Thank
babies
you.
at home. Your hair's curled. Your outfit looks great.
Oh,
Like,
great.
what am
Thank
I
you.
doing over here?
You look beautiful too. You're doing great.